Man, like this is wild. Like it really is one of the more improbable surges that I can remember because it's not just that the Lakers are winning, Jovan. They're winning with defense. You look at the month of February, they were number one in the NBA in defensive efficiency, number one in defensive field goal percentage. It's the team that on the wing starts Austin Reeves, Luka Doncic, and LeBron James. Like this should not be happening. Before we dig into kind of the micro part of all this, on a macro level, what have you thought about what you've seen from the Lakers in the last couple of months?
It's been remarkable. To your point, like this was a group that the first couple months of the season was in the bottom 10 in defense consistently. There were some stretches there. They were in the bottom five, and it kind of made sense based on the available personnel. They were without Jared Vanderbilt, who I think has played a key role in all this, just coming in and wreaking havoc defensively. But this was not a good defensive team for the first 2 months or so of the season. Then I look at January 15th as a turning point for them. So that they had this comeback against the Miami Heat. They're down 20 plus, and it's looking like their fourth consecutive disappointing loss. They just lost to all three Texas teams in a row. It's right after the early January LA wildfires, and they're going through a lot of adversity. JJ Redick just lost his home. Guys have been displaced. And there's just it's kind of like this sliding doors moment for their season. But they have this significant comeback against the Heat. They win that game, and from that point on, they've gone 18-4, best record in the NBA since that date. And they're 10th in offense, first in defense by almost 2 points per 100 possessions, like by a decent margin there. First in defense and third in net rating behind only the Oklahoma City Thunder and Cleveland Cavaliers. So people that want to talk about those two teams, I get it. But the Lakers, we did not expect them to be third in that conversation. And just this stretch, like even coming out of the All-Star break now, 7 consecutive games allowing 102 points or fewer, which in 2025 is pretty impressive. Like that's like allowing like 85 points, 20 years ago. So like their defense has really been carrying them. And then offensively, it's been a lot of LeBron and Luka and Austin. But even last night against the Clippers, no Austin Reeves, no Rui Hachimura, and third and fourth respective leading scorers. They don't miss a beat. They just lean more in on Luka, LeBron, Dalton Connect gives them something, and then defensively they're rotating, scrambling, and defending the Clippers, fairly well. So it's been insane to me just to see the level of defense and commitment that JJ Redick has gotten out of this group. And like the Denver game to me was really the one where to hold that group to 100 points, the way that they guarded Jokic, I thought was one of the best defensive game plans and execution I've ever seen against Jokic. Just 13 points, 7 field goal attempts for him, 6 turnovers. Like they really locked him down, and they're doing it without a traditional center. Like Jackson Hayes is not, and a lot of games he's playing 18, 20, 22 minutes. So like the rest of the game, they're going basically centerless and playing these small ball looks. So it's like that, yeah, it's been an insane turnaround.
Yeah, they doubled Jokic a lot in that game, and that was something I don't think the Nuggets were expecting. Let's drill down the defense here because it's just wild, some of these statistics. And Kendrick Perkins was on TV recently talking about how they're kind of giving up the three. I don't think it's that simple, but I do think they have prioritized the paint, over these last couple of months a lot more than they have the 3-point line. That being said, in February, they were 7th in the NBA in defensive field goal percentage from three. So they maybe teams were missing a lot of shots, but they were still getting the job done defending the 3-point line. Like what has changed with this team defensively? How are they getting this done? Because I think Vanderbilt has absolutely helped. He's an excellent, versatile defender. I think Dorian Finney-Smith has absolutely helped. Versatile defender. But you're still talking about a bunch of guys that, for the most part, are not plus defenders. One of the reasons that Dallas was willing to move off Luka was that he wasn't a very good defender. I mean, how are they getting this done to the level where they are ranking above teams that have the horses for this? Like you point to Oklahoma City and say, hey, that team's number one. I get that. You've got Lou Dort. You've got Alex Caruso. You've got Jalen Williams. You've got Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. You've got a bunch of guys in that front court that are versatile. Boston, same thing. Bunch of versatile defenders. You don't have that with this Lakers team. How are they able to rise to the top of the NBA in defense? What are they saying about that?
Well, number one, I think JJ Redick and the coaching staff deserve a lot of credit for their game plan because we've seen them have this success now against like they have had an easier stretch of schedule during parts of this 22 games or so, but they beat the Knicks on the road, they beat the Celtics, they beat the Warriors, they beat the Clippers, they beat the Nuggets. So like they've beaten some pretty good teams and a couple of those teams multiple times now. So I think looking at it, it's been a lot of swarming bigger players. So that in New York, they're swarming Karl Anthony Towns and rotating on the backside. Similar thing with Jokic of where they're fronting him, had a second guy, and then even sometimes had a third guy. And I think that they've really done a good job of selling out against certain players and then really zoning up with the other two guys on the weak side in a unique way where, to your point, like it can create a lot of 3-point opportunities for an opponent, but you got to be able to make that pass. And even seeing a guy like Jokic struggle a little bit with that, and certainly a guy like Karl Anthony Towns struggle with that, I think it's just a brilliant game plan from JJ. And like they've also been taking Jackson Hayes off. Big men and putting him on the weak side. So it's kind of different when like we often think about positions and like this guy has to guard this guy, but it's been let's put Dorian Finney-Smith or Rui or Vando on these bigs double to kind of take that away. And then when they're trying to make those skip passes, they're trying to make it over a 7-foot Jackson Hayes, who if there's one thing he can do defensively, it's jump and be long and be athletic. So I think that they've kind of gamed the defensive side of the floor and kind of mucked it up a bit and done some unconventional things that have been pretty effective. I also think LeBron has really stepped up on that end of the floor, and it's night and day to where he was early in the season, because there'd be these clips you'd see of like LeBron's the low man. He's supposed to rotate. He's not rotating. Guys are getting layups, guys are getting offensive rebounds. And it was kind of understandable just because this dude's 40, year 22. He's played more minutes than anybody in NBA history. You don't expect him to give you 100% on the defensive end in early December, in mid-November. But over the past like month and a half, LeBron has really been locked in on the defensive end. Even last night against the Clippers, he has that block on Chris Dunn. If Chris Dunn gets that layup, the Clippers are down 30. I mean, they're down 3 with 30 seconds left. Instead, LeBron chases him down, does one of his trademark blocks, and he basically saves the game there and ices it. So I think from LeBron, you've seen a certain level of buy-in, and it's like when that dude's defending, you can't take possessions off. Like that's kind of the thing is I think he's set the tone of if I'm going to bust my ass and defend, you all have to. And I think he has really set the tone there with that.
I don't know how he's been able to do it at this level. I mean, JJ talked about how he sat down with LeBron after that Miami blowout, and since then he's been playing at an all defensive team level. And I agree with him. Like you watch these games night after night. Not only is he the best offensive player on the floor, still the most athletic guy on the floor, which is remarkable at age 40, but he's most of the time the best defender that's out there. And he's always been able to do it in spurts, right? Like you get to the critical juncture of a game, he can give you all defensive level defense. But over these last 6-8 weeks, it's been every single night. And I agree with you. He's kind of the head of the snake there. When he's defending at age 40 at that level, a lot of times guys kind of fall in line behind that. I'm just wondering, like, is there a breaking point here? I mean, he is 40 and he continues to do these remarkable things. Like, can he keep up this level of defense? I think that's going to be interesting to watch. And I look, JJ deserves a lot of credit. I didn't know what to make of him to start all this. He obviously really wanted this job. He wanted to get into coaching. I thought it was the right decision to surround him with guys like Scott Brooks and Nate McMillan, guys that know the ins and outs of coaching. That was smart, but he's obviously connected with these guys in ways that previous coaches perhaps have not. Like, I keep hearing about the buy-in with the Lakers. Like, what does that buy-in look like? What differentiates what JJ's been able to do with this team that maybe Darvin Ham couldn't do, Frank Vogel couldn't do at the end? Where's the connectivity there?
Well, you referenced the Miami game, and like I was there, and that team basically quit in the third quarter, and it was unlike anything I can recall from a team that like had championship or playoff aspirations. Where in
You
that
could have,
third quarter,
you could have started the JJ watch right there. Like, when
yeah,
they're getting
no,
blown out by
seriously, and
40
that
on the road, like you
there
could have
was
started that.
already. I mean, I know the national shows were talking about it. Is he in the going to be in the hot seat or like it felt like like at that point I was also looking at the locker room as just like, okay, well. You gave up on Frank Vogel. You gave up on Darvin Ham. You seem to be giving up on JJ Redick. At some point, it's got to be something going on in that locker room where they just tune out their coaches. Like I can't, there's always blame to go to multiple parties, but I felt like at some point it's got to be on the players to like not give up on your coach middle of the season. But from that point, there's been an incredible level of buy-in. And I look at LeBron. I do look at AD before he got traded. But I think the one thing that talking to players in that locker room that JJ has been great with has just been the communication side of it and really laying it out of every game. They have a clear game plan on both sides of the ball. They have their rotation matrix where they basically have the rotation entirely mapped out, and it is open to change in the course of a game. But players know when they're coming in, how many minutes they're going to play. They know their role in the pecking order offensively and defensively. And I think just that clarity, it's a small thing, but players are creatures of habit. They like knowing what to expect on a nightly basis. And I think last year, for example, a common criticism was not knowing when they were going to play, what types of shots they were going to get. Sometimes the game plan would be one thing in the morning, then by the pregame it would change. So I feel like just cleaning that part up has been a big thing to get guys in. I also think that there is some type of kind of confirmation bias when you actually see the results. You start to buy in even more. So I think that's been a big thing because another, like I look at Rui Hachimura, who's a guy who's been like he's got the physical tools to be a good defender, but it's been an inconsistent defender throughout his career. And I think at times the Lakers would try to use him as like a wing stopper, and that hasn't really worked. So they've shifted things, and now they've used him as a more of a center defensively. And I think you've seen better results from him where if you give him, like JJ's talked about it, you give him a simple task of just like bang with this guy in the post or front him and use your strength, and he doesn't have to try and dance with guys on the perimeter. You see a better version of Rui defensively. So I think it's been a combination of clear communication and making sure everyone's on the same page just in terms of what to expect, but also kind of shifting things and getting a bit unconventional to try to adhere to the strengths of his roster. So I think that combination, especially in the past month and a half, has really clicked into place and made this group, again, look like one of the top 4 or 5 teams in the league right now.